And now, here's your host, Laurie White.
Hey, thanks for joining us for this Thursday. So happy it's Thursday. That means the weekend's a day closer. Thanks for joining us on the Consumer Advocate Show, and a lot of ways you can join in the conversation today. 593-7241 is our number, or 593-7242. And you can log on to our website, consumeradvocateshow.com. Join in the live chat, and all you have to do, as it says right there on the screen, is click the pencil, put in a username, and join in. Today being Thursday, although it's going to switch and TA will be joining us on Tuesdays starting next week, but it's our consumer crusader, TA Arnold. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm glad to be here.
And for folks who didn't hear your glorious resume the other time you were on, well, let's just mention that we're an economist specializing in surface transportation of freight, trade, and commerce.
That's correct.
Economy is your life.
It is. I enjoy it so much. It's so logical.
Yeah, there you go. Voted number 38th among Idaho statesmen. And what year was this?
That was 1999, I believe.
This was when you were a cabinet member for the governor.
That was correct, yeah.
As the director of the Idaho Department of Commerce.
Well, you can brag about me as much as you want.
Among the 100 most influential persons of that year, as we mentioned, TA was number 38, number 37, the chairman and CEO of Albertsons, and number 39, the president of the University of Idaho.
That's good company.
I'd say so. Here's a guy that knows his stuff.
Well, that's the perception.
Well, they say perception is reality, and in this case, it is reality.
Actually, I brag about him because he's the only person I know that can find a job. The way this economy is going, and that's what we'll be discussing today.
This is really good. We're talking about maximizing your utility. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes, this is. I had an email on that sent to me at TA Arnold at consumeradvocate.com, and I encourage hearing more from people because I want to talk about what they want to know, and rather than what I want to tell them about. Maximizing is an easy term. This is an economist's way of maximizing your utility, is economist's way of saying, how do I get more satisfaction? How do I get more happiness? And in a free economy, and you have free will to choose, you want to choose those things that will give you the greatest benefit. Now, the benefit might be a charity. It might be giving away money. It isn't necessarily greed. It's not being Bernie Madoff. It is doing those things that give you the most happiness. And economists have put it into a term that makes it a little more technical. And as I mentioned, it would have been great back in the 50s if Debbie Boone had, rather than saying, you light up my life, you maximize my utility. My utility.
I don't know if that would have sold as many records.
It would. Economists take a beating about not having a sense of humor, and that. If we had more personality, we'd be accountants. And
but I don't think you fall into that category.
But economists tend to put things in technical terms that sound difficult, but it's a way of saying, how do I get the most out of life? And to some people, getting the most out of life might be gaining money, which would, they think, buy them happiness. And as we know, there are loads of people that have a lot of money that aren't happy at all. And so it's getting the most that you can with the skills that you have to make you enjoy life. And it can be family, it can be couponing, as a matter of fact.
If you're lucky enough, it's also your job, and I'm one of those lucky ones that...
Yeah, and I think you heard me say last week I would have been director of commerce for nothing, but I can say that now 10 years later, and the governors won't dock me any money. I hope they don't stop my pension.
We've heard pensions are in danger here lately.
Yes.
Or at least a cause for concern for a lot of folks.
I can assure you that I would be very happy with just a couple of $1 million.
Yeah, my daughters and I like to say money can't buy happiness, but it sure does help to get there.
Well, that's true. And, you have to realize that money is just measuring value. It's a currency that says this is how much something is worth. And I know we talked about coupons. That's almost like money. And that you can use it to buy more with less.
It really is, and for a lot of folks, it's better than money. Have you seen the show that they've got on TLC? It's called Extreme Couponing, and they have. I watched the very first show, and there are women, guys as well. I know that do couponing. That they buy over like $1,100 worth of groceries for $51 and change.
That is maximizing your utility, I can tell you that.
I'll tell you. But they, and this is a fun site, it's called Circle of Moms, and they did a story on this and gave 5 examples on how to maximize your utility when it comes to couponing. You can combine coupons, load up on the manufacturer's coupons, and then the rebates and all that kind of stuff. You can also find extra coupons online. They, encourage everyone to keep coupons organized, and I know as an economist, organization is a key factor to anything, isn't it?
Well, you have to separate, the things that mean most to you and put them in a little pigeonhole so that you can recall them at the right time.
That's right. Buy in bulk, they say, and plan ahead.
Planning is it.
That's it, for sure. And speaking of groceries, I wanted to get this in. And this also goes toward maximizing your utility. I was watching some of the news programs this morning, and they had a promo for a show on CNBC tonight called Supermarkets, Inc. Inside a $500 billion money machine.
Wow.
Yeah, and think about this. They pointed this out during the promo. Have you noticed that shopping carts are bigger now? Subtly and little bit by little bit, they've increased the size of the shopping carts, so most people now are buying 40% more because of the...
There's a book written now called Nudge, which is a couple of economists have written. It indicates how you can nudge people to a certain outcome by placement or giving them a bigger shopping cart and saying, hey, my shopping cart's not full yet. And so they're adding more to it, and the seller likes it, and the buyer thinks he's better off.
Yeah, exactly. They're saying that this show shows how supermarkets are truly manipulating us. And that's, nobody likes to feel manipulated, but we sure, no pun intended, we buy into it at the supermarkets.
We do.
And I encourage you to watch this if you get a chance tonight. CNBC, I believe it's at 7 o'clock our time. They say 9 Eastern, so you kind of have to do the math. But then when they say 9 Eastern and Pacific, I don't know. It's either at 7 or 8 or who knows. Yeah. But check your local listing.
You've got to learn to tell time, Laurie.
Well, I'm fine when they just stick to Mountain Time, but then when they throw in the same time for Eastern and Pacific, it gets a little confusing. And the other thing that we wanted to point out to folks, the February 2011 issue of Consumer Reports magazine, the cover is 15 ways to never run out of money. And they did a survey that they highlight in this issue about really what you're talking about, maximizing your utility. And they talked with over 24,000 online subscribers, 55 and up, age-wise, about their finances and satisfaction with their lives. And they found that the common keys to peace of mind that had little to do with big salaries or high living were the most prevalent. Some of the people were saying enjoying good health, planning ahead, maximizing savings, having hobbies and friends, and staying in a job with a defined benefit pension, which, as you mentioned, is hard to find these days.
It is.
And having a regular income set for your retirement years. And some even mentioned living within or even below their means, having entertainment, cutting down on entertainment, and spending more of that entertainment time with family and neighbors and playing board games and things like that. Has this economy, you think, forced us to kind of go back to the simpler things?
I think that it is. And when I moved back to Colorado Springs, I downsized quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I have a very small home, I'd say moderate-sized home, all on one level. And I'm looking ahead to the days that I won't be able to do the things that I have been able to do. And I've downsized. And there's been an emphasis on making homes not just homes but mansions. And you look at how much space do you really need?
Yeah.
And I think we've been kind of led and nudged toward that. And I think we need to say, what do I need to be happy? And it is family. And it is, to me, it's dogs and, critters like that.
That's right.
That and give me a lot of happiness. And I love where I live, and I love the outdoors, and the Colorado Springs is a great city.
Well, you don't have kids living at home anymore, do you?
That's a very good point, Mike. Yeah, I will say this. I was in Denver this weekend, and where I have 4 daughters that live up there. My son lives in Crested Butte, and that's why I live here in Colorado Springs. I like the size of the city, and if I wanted, I don't need to be right next door to them, but I stay with them when I'm up there, and stay with my son when I'm up in Crested Butte, and that maximizes my utility.
I really know nothing about economics, so I won't have much to say in this show, I'm afraid. But I did happen to run across some statistics on what it costs to actually have a child nowadays, right?
No.
Oh.
Not including college. Now get this, $275,000 per child.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you've got 5 or 6 kids, you may, want to sit down before you fall over.
Well, that's maybe another reason I live in a small or a modest house, and because I have 5 children, and God bless them, they're all doing very well.
Well, you're a braver man than I am.
I hear about a figure like that, and as a single mom, I wonder how did we manage to do it?
Well, they were simpler times, and I think that kids earned their way through school, and I know one of my daughters up in Denver was a roller skater waitress at a drive-in, and she worked in a nursing home, and she's just given back too. And she was the can-do type of person. All my children have been, and they do what's necessary to get out there and make a living, and they're very practical.
I can see where they get it.
No, in fact, it was one of my daughters who said that we ought to have a bumper sticker that says "Maximize your utility." Listen to the Consumer Advocate show.
I think we're working on those.
Yeah, and I think Mike and I just mentioned too, and we need to make sure we say this before we go to break, that when we talk about utility, we're talking about what gives you satisfaction and happiness. We're not talking about a specific organization or entity that supplies water, wastewater, energy, and natural gas. We're talking about a term that just says happiness, satisfaction, and that sort of thing.
I was concerned when you and I walked in together this morning. You said the topic of my show is maximize your utility. And I thought to myself, well, I think my utility is maximized enough. Thank you very much.
I got my utility bill. Yeah.
Perhaps they've maximized you. That's right.
I think they have. Well, I'll tell you what, coming up we're going to talk about, and we would love to hear your input on this. How do you maximize your utility? How has the economy, maybe children growing up and moving on, how has that changed your definition of what makes you happy? It does change, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the family budget. You would not believe how many people I interview that do not even have a budget or know what their budget is.
Well, with kids and and their ever-changing needs and everything, it's hard to keep a budget.
Yeah.
But we will talk about that. Please join in the conversation. 593-7241 or 593-7242. You can also go to our website, consumeradvocateshow.com, and that's also where you can email TA with your question, comments, or recommendations for future topics. Log on our live chat. All you have to do is click on the pencil, enter a username, and enter in your questions and comments. We're looking forward to those. You're listening to the Consumer Advocate Show here on the Sports Animal, 1300 AM, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Sports Animal 1300.
And we're back on the Sports Animal 1300 AM. This is the Consumer Advocate Show. I'm Laurie White, Michael Satterfield, my partner, and T.A. Arnold, Consumer Crusader and Economist Extraordinaire.
Thank you, Laurie.
We're taking your calls at 593-7241 or 593-7242, or you can join our live chat online at consumeradvocateshow.com, talking about maximizing your utility.
Well, that's a very broad term, just saying, what does it take to make you happy? And by the way, at the end of the show, I think just to show that economists do have a sense of humor, we will we'll have a question which I will ask now, and people could phone in if they wish, or if they have the answer. And the question is, why did the chicken cross the road? That actually is something that's puzzled economists through the years. And
Really?
Yes, it is. And at the end of the show, remind me to answer that question.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought it was just to get to the other side.
Well, maybe that is it, but why?
All right. We'll take your calls, 593-7241 or 593-7242. That's a great idea.
Well, it is. It is. And
why do we do half the things we do?
Well, you know what? We need to sit down, and I have a list, and maybe sometime in a future show I will discuss that. I have a checklist that says, why do it at all? Why do it now? Why do it this way? What could be the unintended consequences? And these are really interesting, and it applies to anything. It can apply to how do you bring up your children, to do you need a new car? Would you buy a new car? We see something of that right now, I think, in the city planning. I read in the paper this morning online that there's a certain amount of a discussion about rebuilding Academy Boulevard. Now, that was new when I had left here and to go to Idaho.
Yeah.
But what's happened is that people have not understood the unintended consequences of building out further. And you build out further and further, you're cannibalizing some of the interior. And that's what's happened here. And to say that you have a situation where what had been a very, very vital and vibrant economy around the boulevard has now gone down because we've built out and people have other choices, which is the economic theme to say we have choices. You choose this or that.
That's right.
And then what you don't choose is going to atrophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also changes, thank goodness. Having moved from the west side now out east to Academy, I've noticed that certain areas that were depressed are starting to come back again too.
Yes, and that certainly will happen, and that's good economics, because people have a choice and they like a charm of something that is not necessarily brand new. They may like things that are a little bit smaller, with the way they used to be. I grew up in the 40s and 50s, and I can tell you things were a lot smaller and a lot simpler.
Yeah.
And I kind of I still like that sort of thing. I don't have to have things bigger to be better.
I think we're all a lot like that, and we'll talk to Marcia, who's calling in, and ask her about that. Marcia, thank you so much for calling in to the Consumer Advocate Show. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Actually, my question goes back to something that you mentioned at the beginning of the program.
Uh-huh.
I work with a lot of young people, and young adults, and you were mentioning the Consumer Report or whatever it was that talked about people greater than 55 years old having kind of rearranged their priorities and determined that there's different things that are more important than what they had probably raised their children believing. And so now we've got these children that have this, I don't know if I want to say sense of entitlement, but there's some
go
of
ahead
that.
And say it.
And I like I said, I work with these people and I watch them, and they struggle and they get themselves in trouble, financially particularly. And how do we address that with our children? If we've created these monsters, how do we come back then and fix it?
I think that Mike hit the topic by saying having a budget, and no one is too young to start budgeting to figure what is my income and what are my expenses likely to be. Also, what are my unforeseen expenses? Will I have dental health? Will I have optical? Will I need glasses? And it's hard to say that you can't. You need to understand that you are going to have those things. You will have a problem with your car. You will have a problem perhaps with your body. I took Frex to Denver a couple weeks ago, and at the bus stop, a lady came up to me and said, "Could you give me $2? I don't have enough to get on the bus." And I can't understand, why would you, the prices are published. I knew what they were, and I would think that she would as well, but why didn't she know what it would cost? And when obviously she did at the time, but why wouldn't she say, I'm going to need to take $6, $7, or whatever dollars it is to do this? And I think the answer is you need to budget. Your children need to budget. That's
the Economist's point of view. Now, if we take it, and I know you're not a psychologist or a sociologist, but is it possible from your life perspective that a lot of us, determined not to be our parents, decided to swing that pendulum to where we were going to be, quote, friends with our children, and you give things to people to make them your friend? Have we enabled our kids?
I think we have as parents, possibly, because we always want the best for our children, but the government has done the same thing. They've said, if you don't have a job, we'll take care of you for a while. When you're older, like I am, we will make sure that you that you have dignity in your later years. I feel like, though, I contributed to that for 50 years, so I'm getting a payback. But there are perhaps too many supports, and you forget that you have these supports, and then they're taken away, and you're on your own. And wow, what a change.
Do you see some of that happening, Marcia?
Well, I actually work with the military, and I see it in some of the young soldiers. And there are certain, services within the military to try to help some of these people. But I remember one situation several years ago where this one young woman, her sister had already declared bankruptcy at 19.
Wow.
So obviously there's parental issues there with what we're teaching our children. And it may be that the parents were just as bad. I don't know that. I watch it. My child is great. I don't have a problem with him so much, but I see it, and you want to do something to try to help these people, but I don't know that you can reteach all of their 25 years of upbringing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems like that sense of entitlement, it shows up in so many different areas, even the roadways. I was driving here this morning, and there are certain people out on the roadways that feel like it's their road, and you're in their way.
That they're more important than anybody else.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Marcia, another problem is that the banks, who serve a very necessary function, also print credit cards, and they send credit cards in the mail. They send them out without regard to a credit rating, and a lot of our youngsters don't even know what a credit rating is, and they don't know what they're accumulating, and they don't understand the compounding of interest, and what a short time it takes, depending upon the rate of interest, for money for the money interest, the amount of interest that is due to double and perhaps be greater than the purchase.
Has your child ever got an actual credit card in the mail, Marcia?
Actually, he did when he was, it was an offer. I don't know about the card, but it was an offer when he was 9 or 10 years old.
My dog got one too.
Yeah.
And maybe as a society, we have all said yes for so many decades now. Everything was yes, take, yes, have more. And now, TA, do we all as a society need to stop and say, no, we stop?
Absolutely. We all have to have our own budget, and we have to say, if I don't have the money for it, do I really need it that much?
But how do we do that when our own government is not even remotely trying?
Marcia, I couldn't agree with you more. You are right on target, and it isn't just the federal government. And I'm going to mention a favorite topic of mine, and that's the SDS to bring water up here to Colorado Springs. Right now, we have water and demand in balance. Mm-hmm. That is economic efficiency. And we could do nothing, and our people that are here in Colorado Springs, all of us, would have enough water. But there is a certain faction that wants the city to be bigger, and they want you to pay for it. They want you to pay for the water for people that don't even live here now, that will be here, 20 years from now, perhaps. And they're going into debt about $2.5 billion, and we don't have it. And if we don't have it, I don't think that we ought to be borrowing money to pay for that, for something just to say we want a bigger city. And no one has asked the question, do we really want a bigger city? I live down here, although my children live up in the Denver area, because I like a smaller city. And there are magazine articles on retirement to say one of the nice things about Colorado Springs is just a fraction of the size of Denver, yet you have access to it.
One of our philosophies, Marcia, is if our government isn't going to say no, we have to stand up as taxpayers, consumers, and say no. That's what our motto is, right? Wheels, our motto.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
So join in with us, will you, Marcia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, we thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And we've also got Stu on the line, but we got to take a quick break. So, Stu, if you can hang on for just a minute or two, we'll be back with T.A. Arnold, our consumer crusader. One of them, we've got some consumer crusaders who also fit into that I'm as mad as you-know-what category. So join in either on our chat line, consumeradvocateshow.com, or like Marcia and Stu, give us a call, 593-7241 or 593-7242. We'll be right back with the Consumer Advocate Show.
Welcome to the Consumer Advocate on 1300 AM, the sports animal, the unbiased, impartial radio program that puts the consumer first. Call in with your problems, questions, recommendations, and complaints. We're here to find the answers, address your concerns, and talk about current consumer issues. And now, here's your host, Laurie White.
Hey, welcome back to the Consumer Advocate Show. We're glad to have you with us. And T.A. Arnold, one of our consumer crusaders and Economist extraordinaire, is here, and boy, we hit a hot topic today, didn't we?
Oh, we did. I thought Marcia had a very good question, very sincere, and there was certainly no edge to it. She was wanting to find out. She didn't have a hidden agenda. She said, "How do you do this?" And I'm glad she called. I hope she benefits.
I think Stu might have just as much of an interesting question or comment. And Stu, thank you for holding on. Welcome into the Consumer Advocate Show.
Sure, thank you. Wonderful show today.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't have so much of a question as a comment I'd like to make to sort of help frame the discussion. I'm happy to hang up and then sort of listen in on what you had to say. But I think it's commendable that you're asking listeners to really back up, take a step back and look at their own individual personal household economy and think about what's important to them, what's of value to them, and make rational and sane decisions in order to achieve those kinds of values in their life. You mentioned, maybe cutting back on not living in a McMansion and thinking about what really makes you happy and putting your putting your money there and not getting all caught up in the hysteria and the mania that we've many of us have witnessed over the last 10 or 15 years. And but my concern or my comment is that I think this is commendable, thinking about the micro economy of the household economy, and that's really what people need to do, just for their own psychological health, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But people, let's face it, we're part of a complex world, a complex nation, and a complex macro economy. And I know that, for example, between 2007 and 2009, the net worth of the median American family dropped from $65,400 to, from $102,500 to $65,400. We know that our retirement fund has shrunk. These are things that probably would have happened whether or not we had an extra kid or not, whether or not we bought the latest and greatest skateboard or not. So there's lots of things that impact individual households that, in a sense, we all feel rather helpless about. We look out at the world and we think about this housing bubble that happened and how it essentially represented one of the most serious heists in the history of mankind. What are we to do about this sort of thing? I'll just go ahead and shut up and stand by and hear what TA has to say on that topic.
Stu, thank you so much for calling in, and hang by your radio, okay?
Stu, thank you for your question. You're right on target, and there are a number of ways that we can economize, and Laurie has talked about coupons. I have some friends who shop the secondhand stores. I won't necessarily all the charities, but there are great buys and very, very good used articles and for pennies on the dollar. And I've been the beneficiary of a friend who buys things that they think that I might like, and I'm amazed at how little they cost. And I am a donor to the, I no longer wear a business suit regularly. I had to give it away to someone else who wears the same size and can carry on. They aren't that much worn. But Mike probably has a few comments as well.
We have a show.
I was just going to say, just a quick comment on what you were saying. Sometimes when you buy secondhand, it's better quality than what you're buying brand new.
Oh, yeah. I'm embarrassed. My kids will point out that I have some things that I've had for many, many years, but they wear so well. And of course, you have to realize that people in public relations and advertising are encouraging you to have the latest that has this logo on it. The logo means nothing to me. And in fact, I don't buy things that have logos on them. I want my own identity. But the materials in many cases were better. I will say that there are things that I didn't have when I was young, that like Gore-Tex, that would have really eased my load climbing some mountains.
One of the things that I really encourage people to do, because there are several companies now here in town that actually do the bartering thing. There's not only bartering on the individual level, but there's bartering now for businesses.
In fact, we're going to have a couple of those on future shows.
Yeah, we are. And so I think the bartering thing is something that we have to do, because it's hard to just afford to live nowadays, But in terms of, we were talking earlier about the kids. Mm-hmm. If these kids ever actually sit down and do a budget and realize how much debt we've laid them with, they may rebel.
So, Mike, I might add that it was a week ago I had written some notes before I came to the show on my email to my granddaughter, because she takes an economics course, and I saw her a couple of days ago, and she said that she ended up writing a paper on bartering.
Oh, good.
Which I think is great that at a very young age she's learning that. And I was thinking, I've grown up and lived in Colorado for over a half a century, and I did live in Idaho for a while and during the 90s, and I was very impressed to find out that and the economies over there that people don't buy on credit the old timers, and that homes were built a stage at a time, including what they call basement houses. And they would build just enough above ground, and they would walk down into their basement, and that was their home. And when they had enough money, then they would build above ground. They were true economists in their own way.
Sounds like it. Hey, we've got Dennis on the phone. Dennis, thank you for holding on, and welcome to the Consumer Advocate Show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your show. It's nice to have a talk radio show mentioning some practical examples of how to economize, especially with all the unemployment that we have, and perhaps some other issues coming up. For example, T, I think, just mentioned about the SPS or whatever this water project is from Pueblo to here.
Well, some call it SBS.
Pardon?
It's Southern Delivery System, SDS. And I also have another term for it, is Sisyphus, if you remember who he was in Greek mythology, who was pushing a stone up a hill, and once he got up the top of the hill, he rolled down, he had to push it up, and he was doomed to do that the rest of his life. And this is pushing water uphill. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. My recollection of SDS was in college, the Students for Democratic Society. Rather militant group. That didn't seem to help most people. But anyhow, being unemployed, and I've canceled my newspaper thing, so I'm rather politically ignorant of what this SDS project might be. But certainly sounds like it's an expensive venture that may be unnecessary and is going to handicap us and our children in the future in terms of economy-wise. Is it really needed?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked, and I hope that you'll email me at T. Arnold at the Consumer Advocate Show, because I'd like to get a nucleus of people that feel the same way. And I see them when I read comments online that people are opposed to it, but these people have their own online name, and so I don't know how to contact them. But I'd love to get people like yourself to write in, and perhaps we can get a nucleus of people. I don't think that it is needed, and they're talking about a huge amount of water for the population that will be here in the 2030, 2040.
Didn't I hear by 2050 it's supposed to double the need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things is, if we can promote the growth of this city by asking employers and bribing them to come here by paying them money, which I don't approve of, why can't we manage growth, which just says, if you want to live here, come here. We'd love to have you. We have about 4,500 to 5,000 houses here. It isn't a matter of we don't have a place for your children or grandchildren, which is the common argument to say we need to think of our grandchildren. There are homes here. They are connected. They have an allocation of water. And my feeling is that water and demand, population, are in balance today. You have efficiency. So if you do nothing, it doesn't cost you anything. Now, if you want to do something to create supply, which it'll be supply-driven demand, then more people will move here. And the more people that move here, that doesn't, in my opinion, improve the quality of life. What are you looking for your happiness? If you want to go to a football game, you have local games to go to. If you want to go on the pro level, and you can go to Denver and watch the Broncos, you can watch the Rockies. But if you like, the Sky Sox, and I have, I enjoy it. So the water is needed only if we promote more and more growth.
Does that address what you were talking about, Dennis?
Well, yeah, pretty much. I have a follow-up question, if I may.
Sure.
With it being such a big issue, and again, I apologize, I'm not too politically informed, but
don't worry.
Is this going to be a campaign issue? I mean, City of Colorado Springs, I know, is going towards a mayoral type of government. Is selection of a candidate going to be important then? And
I am so glad you mentioned that because, Dennis, that is what I believe this election should focus on, is to say, do we want to pay $2.5 billion for this? Now, the City Council has asked, and I've read the resolutions, they have to approve grants of $1,000, and they ask on the last ballot issue if it would be okay for them to keep $600,000, which were overpayments under Tabor. Would they be allowed to keep that? And the newspapers focus on these things, and it's trivia, and especially when you have a $2.5 billion project that has never been totally approved by the feds. They want more public input, and people like you, Dennis, should be a part of it. I hope that you'll send me an email, and I'll see if we can get a nucleus of people who make this a topic in the coming election.
And Dennis, all you have to do is go to our website at consumeradvocateshow.com. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors and coworkers to join in with us.
Okay, I am legal and I can vote.
All right.
All right. You're my kind of guy. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care, and thank you for calling in.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. We're going to have to take just a little break here. Love the calls that we're getting, don't you, TA?
Yeah.
We'll take more of your calls. We still got about 8 more minutes, so if you want to call in and give your questions or comments, 593-7241 or 593-7242. And TJ, before we go to the break, TJ logged on to our live chat and joining in our conversation about maximizing your utility. TJ says, I believe that for myself, I absorb myself in being creative. Making things gives me great joy and satisfaction. I agree with you, TJ. Creativity allows me to face small challenges and be rewarded with a sincere sense of success.
That's beautiful.
That is
beautifully said.
He is creative because even that had a sense of poetry to it.
Mm-hmm. He's an optimist.
Join in our chat, too, at consumeradvocateshow.com, just like TJ, and we'll be back in just a couple.
Sports Animal 1300.
And we're back on the Consumer Advocate Show. We had a question posed to you by TA earlier in the show, and you're not going to give the answer just yet.
This is a question really that has stumped economists for centuries. Even before Adam Smith, and people have asked, why did the chicken cross the road? And that is something that really makes you think quite a bit.
You'll notice in the calls that we had, great questions, great comments, but nobody wanted to even attempt to answer that question.
Well, it reminds me when I was young in 1960 in graduate school. I taught economics at CU in Boulder as a graduate assistant, and I asked a question about elasticity of demand. And one of the students, who obviously didn't know what he was talking about, started his essay by saying, down through the ages, man has been, confronted with this question and about what is, elasticity of demand. He went on and rambled and rambled. I never read the rest of the essay, but but this is a question that is really deep thinking.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
And if you have one last stab to try to answer this question, we'll take it. We've got a couple more minutes at 593-7241 or 593-7242, and you can also take a stab on our live chat at consumeradvocateshow.com. And once again, that's where you go to pose a question or give a comment or a concern. TA would love to get your emails regarding any of the things that we talked about today. And all you have to do is go to contact us. You can send an email to Michael, myself, or TA.
Absolutely, Laurie. I'd love to hear more about what our listeners want to hear more about, and that's what prompted me to talk about this subject this morning.
But what if an actual chicken calls in and tells us?
What that would be, he would be the only one who really knew. We can
call Ripley.
Yeah, we can only assume that the chicken was acting in his best interest, right?
Well, yeah.
Well, Adam Smith would have told us that one day.
Well, since it doesn't look like anybody's going to take a stab at the question, and before we run out of time, why did the chicken cross the road?
I would
Opportunity.
Opportunity. It was his opportunity to maximize his utility. Doesn't that make sense?
Well, look at all the risk, though. He could be run over by a truck.
Oh, he has to. We assume this is a risk-adjusted decision.
You have to balance the risk versus the...
It was either that or end up at Kentucky Fried Chicken. So, see, this goes back to it, that economics is about choices, and you take the choice, and maybe this is less risk for him.
Well, sometimes that farmer's wife is chasing you with an axe. And
that's right. Yeah.
What choice do you have? You know?
Well, that just proves that economists do have a sense of humor.
Okay.
Well, knowing you, we do know that.
Okay.
Well, and the corn may have not grown in the bad soil on one side of the road, so we had to go over.
Yeah. It's always greener on the other side.
Oh, well, thank you, T.A. We always look forward to your visits.
Well, I enjoy it very much. I do want to hear what people want to hear about, and if I don't know it, I'll do the Sarah Palin thing. I'll get back to you on it.
And for Valentine's Day, coming up pretty soon, are you coming out with a new line of maximize my utility Valentine's Day cards?
I think that would be very good. I don't know if my wife would appreciate it saying that you maximize my utility, but truly she does.
I think my wife is expecting dinner and flowers and, for me to pay attention to her, actually listen. Us men have that
you too,
hearing
Mike.
problem. Huh? Yeah. It's a hearing problem.
Just on behalf of women, maybe it would be great if guys decided to maximize their own utility.
I think my wife has her own definition for that, which is helping around the house, which I try to do.
Oh.
Yeah, in that book about Mars and Venus, I don't remember reading about utility and how one utility balanced another.
Yeah. Well, it's a very sound theory, but we all act in our own best interest, and we make those choices.
On that thought, we invite you to just kind of ponder that the rest of the day. Pass it along to family and friends and coworkers, and tell them about the show, please. We'd love to hear from you, and thanks to everybody who called in today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the health fair, which is this Saturday. We're going to be out there. So tune in, 10 o'clock tomorrow. The Consumer Advocate Show will be here, and hopefully you will too. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.